One of the most popular species we get requests for right now is rustic. Seems like a lot of folks are going back in time. There's still a lot of pull and a lot of call for contemporary species, contemporary looks, but this rustic thing has really taken off. About 5 or 6 years ago, Conestoga came out with 5 wood species. They've had them all along, but they kind of launched them as a rustic portfolio, if you will. And there's 5 of them. It's cherry, maple, oak, hickory, and maple. So they will do any of those 5 in the standard smooth species with no, or grades I should say, with no defect, or they'll do them in rustic. When you talk about rustic, it introduces not just knots, which we're going to show here, but also the whole character blend of the wood species in question goes out the window. It's just a whole different look where they'll allow sapwood and cherry, so not just red heartwood, but you'll see some sapwood. In maple, you'll see some tans and browns as well as the bright whites you might be used to. And then you get these bigger knots. So we kind of want to walk through this kitchen. So one of our customers did a nice little basement kitchenette in Rustic Hickory. So we'll talk about this species in general and then kind of talk about some cherry that we brought along that was rustic and some of the characteristics of it. One of the things you have to understand, especially with hickory, is even in normal hickory, you're going to get tons and tons of contrast with the wood. Got real light, real dark, bands of dark here, real dark banding here. That's all part of hickory in and of itself. That's just part of the species. When you go with the rustic hickory, what you're introducing are all these knots. And you can see there are some that are split. There's none that you're going to be able to look through and see daylight on the other side. They're what we call a sound knot. It won't fall out if you hit it with your thumb. But there are cracks, and they're not going to fill those cracks. They're going to be nice and open and pitted, and some are larger, like this one over here is probably 2 inches around. And they might be as small as a little pin knot. And they try to pick the wood so it's well scattered. You shouldn't have one door with no knots and then one door with 7 knots. They try to scatter it so you get a nice blend, and as you look at these doors, you can see they've done a fine job of scattering that look around. When you get into woods like cherry, the knots get a little fewer and further between. You're not going to get quite as many as you get with hickory, but you still get some. You can see the framing bead area on this Amesbury door is kind of chunked off here. That's normal, not a defect. Same down here, you got a piece of the framing bead that's literally missing. A pin knot here, and then probably an 1.5 inch knot here that's got some cracking. I can catch my finger on it, but they're not going to fall out of the door. And then in the same job, we have a door like this that has 3 knots, and then some extra gum, a little gum spot here, kind of a big swirl going on up here. So they're just opening up the characteristics of species a lot. And all the lumber that normally would have been thrown in the trash can or the wood fire, they're going to actually use to make a very cool looking door. Red oak typically comes kind of pinkish red in color. You're going to see more white in the red oak that has rustic in it, but that's going to be still predominantly the red oak you're used to seeing in terms of coloration. It's just going to introduce a lot of those knots. Alder is going to look a lot like cherry in terms of coloration. It kind of starts off pinkish. The difference with alder is there won't be bands of white sapwood going through it. It'll be that all pink color. And the knots tend to have a little more splitting in them than you see with cherry. The cherry knots tend to be a little more sound, but that alder, the knots can get real large too. We've seen knots 2.5 inches. And then the characteristics of the maple, again, the knots are going to be very sound, not a lot of splitting, and probably not as many of them. Maple is not a knotty species to begin with, and you're going to have more of that tan brown going through it, maybe some grays, in addition to the real white that you see with maple in general. There won't be this kind of contrast where you've got white next to dark with this black. It won't be quite as bad as hickory, but it is a very pleasing look. So if you have any questions, give us a call. On our website, we have Conestoga's Rustic Species Guide under our download section. It's a color brochure, basically. You can kind of look at the different species there and see what you're getting. But if you're doing a cabin or a basement like this, you're trying to pull in that old-time look. It's just a really neat look when you integrate in beams and maybe a vaulted ceiling with beams, that kind of thing. It really takes on a whole different look than anything else. And rustic is really the thing that's going to get you there. So give us a call if we can help you with anything.